Which version of Butcher is the strongest in the boys? Maybe the first instinct is to pick the laser vision version. After all, during that phase, Billy Butcher basically had the same kind of powers as Homelander. Super strength, enhanced durability, and laser vision. Most importantly, those abilities were on a nearly equal level with Homelander's. He could trade laser blasts directly with Homelander without instantly falling behind. And when he teamed up with Soldier Boy, they were even able to overwhelm Homelander for a brief moment. No exaggeration, Laser Butcher is arguably the closest thing to Homelander-level power in the entire series, only slightly below Soldier Boy in that lineup. Now, compare that to the tentacle version. On the surface, it looks terrifying. And yes, his first major appearance even results in the death of Victoria Newman. But once you break it down, this form is far less dominant than it seems. The tentacles are versatile, and in close-range fights, Butcher performs well against weaker supes. But against physically strong opponents like Kimiko Miyashiro, his advantage drops significantly. And when it comes to top-tier supes like Soldier Boy or Homelander, he is completely outclassed in direct combat. His tentacles don't reliably defend against high-level energy attacks either, which makes this form feel more situational than truly top tier. Compared to that, the laser vision version is simply far more complete. So looking back, why didn't Butcher fully unlock permanent laser vision? Which version of Black Noir is actually stronger in the boys? When Black Noir gets easily taken down by the Deep, you might start wondering, what if it was the original Black Noir instead? Would he really go down that easily? Even though the second Black Noir comes with a new ability set, including flight, the sense of threat he gives off is far weaker than the original. The first Black Noir already existed during the era of Soldier Boy. He was a true battlefield operator, a hardened killer who had seen real combat. We can look at his past feats. He once completely dominated Kimiko Miyashiro in combat. Even when she fought back with everything she had, she could barely land a clean hit on him. That alone shows how overwhelming his fighting skill was. During his encounters with Starlight, he also managed to suppress her effectively. If not for intervention from Queen Maeve, Starlight likely would have been defeated. Now compare that to the second Black Noir. His weaknesses become much more obvious. Despite having flight and decent physical strength, his actual combat achievements are relatively limited. His first real engagement already exposed this gap when he was easily outmaneuvered by Billy Butcher during a confrontation. And this is especially telling because that version of Butcher was still just a normal human at the time. Meanwhile, the original Black Noir had previously dominated Butcher outright. So if you only look at abilities on paper, the original Black Noir is clearly the more dangerous and effective fighter. What are some of the strange superpower that show up in the boys? First is Gunpowder. He used to be Soldier Boy's right-hand man, skilled with all kinds of firearms. His ability looks simple, but it's strangely precise. He can calculate bullet trajectories in real time. When a target is behind cover, he instantly maps out ricochet paths, bouncing bullets off walls and surfaces multiple times to hit with pinpoint accuracy. And that's where things get dangerous in tight spaces. But in his early days, he was reckless. With a machine gun, he would just spray bullets everywhere, with no concern for friend or foe. Even his own teammates had to stay close to avoid getting caught in his fire. Unlike many supes, he doesn't have enhanced durability or strength. Once an enemy gets close, his threat level drops fast. In the end, he was defeated by Butcher using temporary Compound V. Next is Crimson Countess. She also came from the Payback team and once had a close connection with Soldier Boy. Her power is similar in concept to Scarlet Witch, centered on energy manipulation. She charges energy through physical contact between her hands, then releases it as a powerful blast. The impact is devastating. Anything caught in the blast radius is usually destroyed almost instantly, but there's a catch to how she uses it. Her ability has a very clear limitation. She must press her hands together to build up energy. If her hands are restrained or forced apart, she can't activate her power at all. What are some of the strangest superpowers that show up in the boys? First is Golden Boy. He is one of the strongest supes in Gen V. Golden Boy can ignite his entire body in flames, almost like a living sun. In this state, he burns the air around him to create thrust, allowing high-speed flight. His physical durability is already top tier, but in his flame form, all of his abilities are further amplified, making him extremely dangerous in close combat and long-range attacks alike. After learning the truth about what happened to his brother, his anger reaches a breaking point. He ends up killing the school dean responsible for the situation, but rather than be captured and turned into another experiment, he ultimately chooses to take his own life. Next is Lamplighter. He was once a member of the Seven, and later assigned to guard unstable supes at the Sage Grove Center. Lamplighter's power is similar to DC's Firestorm-style concept, as he can intensify and control fire as a weapon. However, there's a limitation. He cannot generate fire on his own. He always needs an external source to activate his abilities, and he is not immune to burns, meaning his power is as risky for him as it is for others. Then there is Gecko. He worked as a researcher for Vought International. Gecko's ability is extremely extreme regeneration. He can regrow any lost limb repeatedly with a healing speed far beyond normal biological limits. On top of that, he does not feel pain in a normal way, which allows him to endure injuries that would incapacitate almost anyone else. What are some of the strangest superpowers ever seen in the boys' universe? First is Kate Dunlap. She is a student at Godolphin University. Kate's ability is surprisingly simple. As long as she makes physical contact with someone, she can force that person to follow her commands. In addition, Kate can pull people's minds into a mental realm, and if someone dies inside that mental space, their physical body can die as well. But a power this strong comes with a serious downside. Kate cannot completely switch off her ability. To avoid accidentally affecting other people, she has to wear gloves almost all the time, and whenever she pushes her power too far, she suffers intense headaches. You could say Kate possesses one of the most terrifying abilities at all of Godolphin University, but it is also one of the hardest abilities to control. Next is Emma Meyer, better known as Little Cricket. She is also a student at Godolphin University. Emma has the ability to freely change her size. She can shrink herself down to a tiny scale or grow into a giant, but the way her power works is incredibly unusual. If she wants to shrink, she must first empty the food from her stomach, and if she wants to grow larger, she has to keep eating. When Emma becomes giant-sized, her strength and durability increase along with her size. At her largest, she can overpower many other soups, but when she shrinks, she can move through tight spaces that most people could never access. This allows her to carry out infiltration missions that would be impossible for an ordinary person. What are some of the strangest superpower that show up in the boys? First is Black Hole. He appears in Gen V Part 2. His ability is to consume anything. When activated, any target is pulled into his body. But the strange part is that he doesn't swallow things through his mouth. Instead, it happens through his rear end. Even more bizarre, his body itself doesn't change at all. The objects he absorbs seem to be transferred into another space, or possibly compressed in size, and nothing he takes in is actually destroyed. Living targets can survive inside him, and when he releases them later, they return completely unchanged. This ability can also be used in combat. For example, he can store large amounts of water in advance, then release it like a high-pressure water cannon. Next is Harper. She has a kangaroo-like tail, which makes her look harmless at first glance, but her power is anything but normal. She can copy the abilities of any other superhuman. Once she makes physical contact with a target, she can temporarily replicate their power and use it immediately. The duration only lasts about 1 minute, but the output is often even stronger than the original user. On top of that, she does not suffer from the usual side effects that come with those abilities. She can adapt instantly in fights. However, she cannot store abilities in advance. In combat, she also needs support from her teammates in order to copy a target's power. What are some of the strangest superpower that show up in the boys? First up is Doppelganger. He is a spy-type supe working for Vought, capable of transforming into anyone he chooses in order to infiltrate targets. This is not just simple face changing. He can fully replicate a person's physical traits down to precise voice imitation and body structure, making him nearly impossible to detect in disguise. He once used this ability to seduce high-level executives and collect compromising photos for blackmail. Later, he was discovered by Homelander. Due to Homelander's personal preferences, Doppelganger to stay in the form of Madeline Stillwell and remain in his home for an extended period. However, things eventually went too far when Doppelganger transformed into Homelander himself. That act enraged Homelander, and he was killed on the spot. Next is the Gunner, another Vought-affiliated spy supe. She possesses an even more advanced transformation ability compared to Doppelganger. Unlike him, she must physically touch her target in order to copy their appearance. Once transformed, she can maintain the new form for a long time without pain or instability. However, her supe physiology does not change when she transforms. This becomes her only weakness, as her original biological traits remain unchanged even in disguise. In the end, Huey is able to expose her because she does not sweat, a detail that gives away her identity during observation. What are some of the strangest superpower that show up in the boys? First is Little Cricket, a supe from Gen V. Her ability is body size manipulation. She can shrink down to the size of an ant, or grow up to the height of a 2-story building. But the strange part is this: every time she shrinks, she must empty her stomach first, and when she returns to normal size, she has to keep eating constantly. However, something even more unusual happened once. After being yelled at by Sam, she lost control of her emotions. Her body suddenly started shrinking on its own, but this time, she did not go through the process of emptying her stomach. Some fans believe her size change is actually linked to her emotions. When she enjoys food and feels happy, she can grow bigger. When she feels stressed or upset, she becomes smaller. Next is Termite. Unlike Little Cricket, he can only shrink his body. Even after shrinking, he still keeps superhuman strength, and he can return to normal size almost instantly. This makes his ability extremely dangerous. But the biggest issue with Termite is not his power. It is that he never really tries to develop it. Every time he appears, he ends up doing completely wild and reckless things. These abilities are not just random jokes. They also reflect how unstable Compound V can be in the boys' universe. Some powers look cool on the surface, but come with strange biological limits. That is what makes this world feel both absurd and unsettling. Why does Butcher still want to eliminate all other soups after defeating Homelander? A lot of people's first reaction is simple: he's gone crazy. Because on paper, the mission is already complete. The man he built his entire life around taking down is finally gone. So logically, Butcher should have stopped. But Butcher was never only chasing Homelander. Like he needed to stay in a constant state of war just to feel alive. Homelander wasn't the end goal. He was the anchor point. And when that anchor finally drops, Butcher doesn't feel peace. He feels a gap opening up instead. After Homelander's fall, he doesn't step away like a normal person would. He turns his focus toward the entire Vought system. Because in his mind, as long as Vought still exists, another Homelander will eventually appear. A system like that doesn't die with one man. Even more painfully, Butcher understands something he rarely says out loud. The moment he loses his powers, his own clock starts ticking faster too. So he's running out of time in more ways than one. And yet, he also knows the truth. He can't realistically wipe Vought off the map completely. That's why his plan shifts. Instead of total destruction, he starts trying to redirect control. He pushes Huey into a position where Huey would take responsibility for guiding what comes next inside Vought. In Butcher's mind, under Huey's leadership, Soups might still be forced into something closer to accountability instead of chaos. Is Termite the most disturbing parody superhero in The Boys? In The Boys, this character is a dark parody of Marvel's Ant-Man. He often reduces his size and ends up in situations that cross every imaginable boundary. At one point, during a private encounter with someone he knows, he shrinks down and enters their body. But the situation quickly spirals out of control. He sneezes at the worst possible moment, triggering an accidental size change that causes him to instantly return to normal scale. At the same time, Frenchie is tracking him. Realizing the risk of exposure, Termite decides to eliminate Frenchie to keep everything under wraps. Even at insect size, he is far from harmless. His strength does not shrink with him. Instead, it becomes highly concentrated. It's like compressing the full power of an adult superhuman into a tiny point, making every strike far more destructive than expected. However, he does have clear weaknesses. When reduced to such a small size, his biological resistance drops significantly, leaving him vulnerable to environmental threats that would be harmless. In the end, he falls into Butcher's trap. The container is filled with granulated sugar. The overwhelming amount of sugar causes an immediate physical reaction, and he is forced to vomit on the spot. This Ant-Man-style character design actually comes from a certain idea. Some people once suggested that Ant-Man could shrink, enter Thanos' body, and take him down from the inside. So do you think this idea would actually work? Why is Homelander so weak now, to the point where he can't even overpower Butcher and Kimiko anymore? In the final battle, Homelander clearly had the upper hand against Butcher and Kimiko, but strangely, he still couldn't seriously hurt either of them. The moment he saw Kimiko's energy blast, he immediately backed off. Then Butcher's tendrils pulled him right back in and slammed him into the ground. At this point, his combat performance honestly looks worse than before he even got V. But here's the weird part. In the previous episode, Homelander was able to overpower Soldier Boy with his bare hands. That level of strength should have been more than enough to crush Butcher instantly. So what happened here? Was Soldier Boy holding back the whole time? Now let's look at Homelander's past fights. Back in Season 3, he fought both Soldier Boy and Butcher at the same time. When Butcher used his heat vision, Homelander matched him head-on without losing ground. In close combat against Soldier Boy, he also looked far more comfortable and in control. Even after Huey joined the fight, Homelander still managed to escape unharmed. But now, he suddenly struggles against just Butcher and Kimiko. And remember, Kimiko is basically a much weaker version of Soldier Boy in terms of raw power. So overall, the finale still feels rushed in a lot of ways. The power scaling especially doesn't really hold up once you think about it closely. So what do you think? What are some of the strangest superpowers seen in The Boys? First is Stacy. She is the student affairs director at Godolkin University. Stacy can spit honey from her mouth, and she also has a bee-like stinger growing from her back. It looks like a kind of insect-based enhancement, almost like an assassination-type ability. At first glance, it almost feels like something designed for stealth kills, but her stinger attack is single-use. Just like a real bee, once she uses it, it's basically gone for good, which means that what looks like a superpower is, in practice, almost not a power at all. As for her other ability, producing honey from her mouth, it has almost no real combat value, and if you treat it as food, it's not exactly something anyone would want to eat. So overall, she ends up being considered one of the most useless soups. Next is Jordan Lee. She is also a student at Godolkin University. Jordan's ability is similar to a transformation system, almost like switching modes. The shift isn't just visual, it completely changes how they approach a fight. In their short-haired form, their physical strength is greatly enhanced, making them a close combat fighter. In their long-haired form, they can launch ranged energy attacks, functioning more like a mage style. In actual combat, Jordan switches between the two forms fluidly, stringing together attacks like a combo system. It's the kind of ability that rewards timing more than raw power. So have you ever wondered what form Jordan Lee had before gaining their powers?